All of this information is contained in most systems of record, and it's just a matter of how do you get that data out into an environment that then you can prepare for accurate business purpose outputs. Look, you can't really solve the technical need. You got to solve the business need first. When you start with that, you solve a lot of problems along the way.
Welcome to 5 Minutes, your quick dive into the wide-ranging world of insurance, technology, and leadership. I'm Miguel Edwards, and I'll be your guide as we explore these topics that are transforming not just the insurance industry, but the business world at large. Along with sharing observations I've made over the span of my career in insurance, technology, and operations, I'll be chatting with some of the brightest minds in business and leadership. Whether you're a seasoned executive or a rising star, an industry expert, or just curious about how technology is revolutionizing insurance, this is your perfect spot for your weekly dose of insights. This is 5 Minutes.
Yandy, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So how's the show been for you so far, InsurTech New York?
It's been overwhelmingly positive.
Wow.
I've met a lot of people, very good connections in the industry. I'm starting to realize how large yet very well-connected ecosystem it is.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to be part of it and to contribute as much as I can to the ecosystem.
Yandy, you and I were talking earlier, off camera, and we were talking a little bit about data, and we've talked a lot about data here at the conference and in some of the discussions about how important that is, particularly even as you start preparing for AI and all kinds of other things. As you think about the typical challenges of access to data, and dare I even say information, what are some of the things that you're seeing out there and potential solutions?
Well, the biggest challenge that I see for any technology out there, specifically artificial intelligence, it's another tool that is going to enhance the day-to-day worker, but there's a big asterisk that is really not talked about enough, and that's the quality of the underlying data feeding these systems. If the data is not clean, or if the data is not doesn't have the right context, it goes along the same saying that is garbage in, garbage out.
Sure.
And if it's not addressed early enough, it's going to be a long-term issue for the industry. But I think a lot of people are taking initiatives to address that.
Got it.
The common issue is, access to information. Decision makers are pretty much, they want information. They want access to critical, real-time, accurate information. Mm-hmm. And that's typically a problem. The way to go really is building the right data ecosystem.
Okay.
That's where it starts.
Right.
All of this information is contained in most systems of record. And it's just a matter of how do you get that data out into an environment that then you can prepare for accurate business purpose outputs. It's not really the technical conversation.
Right.
It's more of, look, you can't really solve the technical need. You got to solve the business need first.
Right.
When you start with that, you solve a lot of problems along the way.
That makes a lot of sense. And what's resonating for me, Yandy, is that there was a conversation in one of the panels where, and I think it was a guy from Nationwide, was talking about how all of these big data initiatives, they have a very, very low success rate. Big data initiatives. And I think what I'm hearing from what you're saying is because they're not tying to a business problem.
Yeah.
Am I on the right track?
100%.
Okay. So we should start instead with what business problem are we trying to solve? And then now once I've identified that, now where do you go? Where do you take that from there? These are the problems, these are the questions I'm trying to answer. Where are you going to take it from there?
Yeah, so this is a principal question in building data warehouses, building data lakes. It's either top-down or bottom-up approach, one of the two.
Right.
But if you don't start with answering the business question first,
sure,
you can build something great that solves a problem, but it doesn't solve the critical problem.
Right.
And there have been many data initiatives throughout all industries,
sure,
not just InsurTech. And the failure rate is primarily driven by the how those initiatives are basically being driven.
Okay.
Who is steering the ship? Is the sponsor a business user or a technical person?
Right.
And that can really make a huge difference between the outputs. Is the technical person really business oriented, asking those business questions so that the product that is being built is answering those questions?
Sure.
If it's just, hey, let's build a data warehouse to have the data in one place, that's nice, but is that data really modeled in a way that makes sense for the business to be able to ingest?
Interesting. Got it. So now we got to talk a little bit about the technical element of this, because now I'm curious. So I've got this business question that I have. my gut tells me that now I've got to go after all of my systems of record. I got to figure out how to homogenize all of that, put that in a data warehouse, and then I can do stuff with it. And I'm thinking about the big monumental lift that is. Is that the approach that we're taking in 2025?
No.
What are we doing?
That's old school.
I love it.
Yeah, so back in the day, you would have to, connect all your system into a staging layer. That staging layer, you'd have to figure out, okay, how do I model these dimensions here and there? That's the old way of doing things.
Okay.
Nowadays, you can basically take all of your data, but before you get all the data, get the metadata, the underlying definition of those columns, fields, tables, and then provide additional context as to what that means.
Okay.
You feed that into a model. Specifically, you could use a generalized model as of now, or you can use that model to provide specific training sets on the schema, the underlying definition of what that data means.
Okay.
And then you use that to provide you additional recommendations as to what your schema should look like. That alone takes away a pretty big chunk of the workload that you would have typically a data steward look into and define. That could be completely automated. You could use that. You could then use crawlers to infer schemas.
Yep.
Compare those schemas into the recommendations, and then that's a really good starting point. And what used to take months to do, you could now do a day or two.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Let me fast forward and let me picture Nirvana. Let me picture the solution, whatever that is, up and running. What is the experience for the user? Because ultimately, how we started this conversation is business problem, right? Business value. So fast forward and user, what does that experience, what should it look like?
A business user should be able to log into an interface, ask a question like you and I are speaking.
Yes.
And get a results
right.
that should be 100% tailored to that question.
Right.
And should solve that question, provide you insights, provide you recommendations as to how to handle this data that you're now looking at in front of you.
Right.
And additional variations of what that data can be or should look like, or maybe even suggestions as to what strategies could work, aligned with the business to make something out of that data.
But now, does my question have to look like if class code equal and payroll check and this, that, all these if then statements, is that how I'm asking my question?
So that was the Power BI ask and question and answer product that came up with about 3 to 4 years ago. That's, I think, tabled by now.
Okay.
That was an issue they ran into. They had to be very specific in how they structure that question.
That's right, because I'm thinking about training the business user to do this.
Right, and that's another constraint to adoption.
Right.
So that's the thing of the past. Now with large language models and the ability to use adapters and also fine-tuning of those models, you can add enough context and enough training data to even samples of your reports and what that data should look like to have the models have really good context awareness of what that question means.
Got it.
But again, it has to be, if you're looking at taking a machine learning model, even an open source model, you got to take that model, put it into its own siloed ecosystem, train it into the specific data that the carrier has, provide all the different use cases that are relevant to the data that you're already producing from your system of record.
Sure.
But just get them as samples.
Right.
And additional training into those models. And then eventually you get a product that actually provides meaningful insights, has real context awareness.
I guess the one last piece here, though, that I'm still a little confused about is, are you suggesting that I no longer have a need to bring all of my data into one centralized place? I can leave those systems of record with their data where they are, and then this solution grabs data from it?
I would still stick to the data lakehouse approach.
Okay, got it.
I think that's number one requirement.
Okay.
That solves many problems. For example, if you're going to have a system that is constantly pulling resources from a system of record, that becomes an operational constraint. Sure. So you definitely don't want to do that.
Right.
Putting everything into a data lakehouse where you can stream data in real time as events take place, then you can have your data team work on that data lakehouse, answering these problems.
Yes.
The system, whatever system it is that has these capabilities, put it on top of that data lakehouse to then fetch data from there. The data lakehouse also provides you the ability to create a vector store.
Okay.
And that is you
got to create a
vector store.
Vector store.
Basically, that's how large language models you can provide real context by creating a RAG, retrieval augmented generation pipeline.
Got it.
And once you start feeding that vector store with binary, basically the vector data,
Yep.
then you can put a layer in between your large language model using the RAG so that it understands in real time what you're asking.
Got it. So last question for you, Yandy. Everything rages around AI and kind of the future. As you think about, what you're working on and your vision, what do you see down the road? Like what's in your crystal ball around the advancements in technology and how they speak specifically to the availability of data and information?
Artificial intelligence is a really valuable resource. And as long as people understand that it's a tool that is going to make you 1,000 times better at what you do, possibilities are limitless. And enhancing these tools with additional context and the right context window, the right meaning of what things mean. For example, context awareness of insurance, what insurance means, specific lines of coverage and how each one is handled differently. As long as you understand that that is the number one step before you start even considering adopting the tool, then you're on a really good path for success.
Got it.
It's not a plug and play ecosystem.
Yeah.
Only generative maybe, but if the right context is not there, then there's a really high risk for hallucination.
Sure.
And that's my biggest concern. But I'm highly optimistic for the future of insurtech and artificial intelligence as it keeps on getting embedded into the entire ecosystem.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Yandy. This has been very, very, you've made me appreciate how much more learning I have to go do about this. Yeah, I thought I knew what I needed to know, and obviously I've got some gaps I've got to fill in. So thank you so much for this education.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to contributing as much as I can to the entire ecosystem, and I'm here to help anybody. I'm happy to answer any questions from anybody throughout the ecosystem.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share it with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.